Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have C. Paul Smith. We'll be discussing his fantastic book, The Fetal Right to Life Argument, 2nd edition. And the book is available for purchase at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or if you guys want to get everything that Paul has to offer, do yourself a favor and head directly to his personal site, cpaulsmith.com. There, not only will you find more information on Paul himself, you'll find more information on this book as well as some of the other narratives in which he's written, as well as find hyperlinks set up to take you to the purchasing page. So one more time, that's cpaulsmith.com. And I will say, Paul was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by some of the best movers in the business, Author Reputation Press Publishing. So if you have a book that you'd like moved, you already know you got to move it through ARP. You can find out more information on them at authorreputationpress.com. And guys, listen, right off the bat, let's call a spade a spade. Looking at the title of the book before we go any further, you know what we're discussing today. And this is a highly debated topic. It is a hot topic, not only in today's current climate, but also, guys, this has been something that has been a highly contested argument since back in, 1973, I believe was the Roe V Wade case. Early 70s, I know that for sure. So this is something that is over 40 years in the making. And it is just as timely today as it was 40 years ago. This is still a discussion that every time any political election comes up, but especially a presidential election, this is always one of the highly debated topics. And guys, keep in mind, Paul is coming from a background in law. So he's going to know the Roe v. Wade case probably much better than the common everyday person, myself included. So sit back, strap in, and get ready for a fantastic education. Paul, first and foremost, thank you so much for being a guest with us today on People of Distinction. How are you?
Hey, Ben, great. It's good to be with you.
Fantastic. Well, listen,
and you're right. Roe v. Wade was 1973.
Fantastic. I knew it was there. I wasn't sure if it was 70, 71, 72, 73, but 73, fantastic. My brain hasn't left me yet. I still have it. No.
Good.
Paul, listen, I know we have so much information to cover. Let's hold off slightly, though, before we jump into your book. Start by telling our listening audience a little bit more about yourself, please.
Well, I'm an attorney. I've been in practice, I think it's 43 years now. I practice law in Maryland, and I've been practicing there that long. I went to law school at Brigham Young University from 1975 to 78. And so I mostly have done general law practice, a lot of litigation and divorces and real estate and bankruptcy and all sorts of types of litigation. And more recently, I've stopped doing divorces and I basically just do probate law right now. And at the same time, I've been very active in my church. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so that's basically who I am. I'm married and have, my wife and I have 12 children. So
wow,
all there. That's my greatest claim to fame, frankly.
Paul, that is absolutely remarkable. Listen, we're going to have you back on the network, not to discuss your law practice, not to discuss any of your other books, just to discuss 12 children. How does one do that? How do you live through that? I come from a very big family myself, and my goodness, there was never a dull moment in the household, and I can imagine with 12 children, whew, you have stories for days.
Well, my wife and I are still married. She still loves me, and frankly, that's the reason we have so many. She's a wonderful, incredible person.
Absolutely. Well, listen, it sounds like you have a wonderfully beautiful family. So much love to go around. That's fantastic. Best of luck to you and to yours. That's wonderful to hear. Without further ado, let's jump right in. The Fetal Right to Life Argument, second edition. Tell us a little bit more about your book.
Well, I started this book as a student in law school, and after my second year, I did a paper for one of my classes on the Roe v. Wade case, which was I think it was 77, I think, when I did it, which was a really hot topic back then. And so I did a bunch of research, different cases and so forth. Well, I pulled the book out again about a year ago and said, my goodness, I did a pretty good job, and the issue is still very timely. And so I took upon myself to update it with some recent cases, and then published it. This is the second edition, 44 years after the first one.
Mm-hmm. Now, Paul, let's go into inspiration and further down with inspiration, because you've already started talking about really where this started for you. Now, what inspired you to dust off the cobwebs from it after some 40 years or so since you originally wrote the book and put it out now, aside from it just being a timely book?
Well, the issue is controversial, and I have not shied away from addressing controversial issues, and I try to avoid them around family and friends if it's going to be too unpleasant, but I do enjoy them. So this is an issue that right off the bat was of that nature, and when I initially did research, I studied what the United States Civil Rights Commission wrote about Roe v. Wade and the right to life, and I came away infuriated. It was a U.S. commission, and they opposed recognizing a right to life, and their report, an extensive report, was so biased, I felt, that gave me energy to write it. And so I talked about a number of applications that are interesting. But most recently, well, just take the last presidential campaign. Is Roe v. Wade going to be reversed? That was the narrative, and one side worried that it would be, and the other side wanted it to be. And my reaction to that is such a superficial, shallow understanding of Roe v. Wade. There's no way Roe v. Wade is going to be totally overturned. It could, and of course, I guess a lot of people don't know, but we're recording this in July of 2021, and just last month the Supreme Court accepted a case from Mississippi where if they wanted to, they could reverse Roe. It's a case from Mississippi where they want to extend the time back to 15 weeks when a state can prohibit abortion to preserve the life of the unborn baby. So it remains very timely. Anyway, that case was interesting. The Supreme Court had that case for about a year before they decided to take it, which is also highly unusual. And frankly, they took it because I think they know what they're going to do with it. So again, it's a very timely issue today. And I think someone who really wants to understand Roe v. Wade, this book would help them, give them a lot of background of just basic about the case.
Now, Paul, let's go more in depth, slightly. Of course, listen, guys, if you want to get all of the intricacies to it, there's no way around it. You have to go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You have to go directly to his personal website, cpaulsmith.com, and purchase the book. But since we have you here on the line, a highlight for our listening audience, again, someone of your caliber, coming from a law background, the Roe v. Wade case probably much better than the common everyday person. Highlight for us the Roe v. Wade case from your perspective, please.
Well, I think there are about three principal areas of the case that people need to understand. One, in Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court recognized a woman's right to privacy or the right to control her body. That right is not listed in the Constitution, but the court said it exists as a fundamental right. And I happen to believe that was a good thing they did. So Roe v. Wade is kind of complicated. That was a good part, and I hope that remains. But the Supreme Court, the second thing it did was they said that a fetus has no right to life. That has infuriated many people. They did not need to do that. Most states had rights that protected fetal right to life. And so a lot of people were upset about that. A third part of the case was the Supreme Court basically took this issue away from the states and as a federal system began to regulate abortion. A fourth thing, I said three, but I just thought of a fourth one. A fourth issue, which is a big one, is all right. If the state is going to, if the Constitution will protect the fetal right, when? And in Roe v. Wade, the court said, well, beginning at the end of the second trimester, the court can protect fetal life. And they also said that when the fetus becomes viable, they can protect fetal life. And so that has always existed, and because of that, partial birth abortion, frankly, has been upheld in the last trimester. But that deadline or that time limit of when you can begin to protect fetal life is what the Mississippi law is trying to push back from, say, 24 weeks back to 15 weeks, which would almost the entire pregnancy. I guess after about a third of the pregnancy, it would allow states to prohibit abortion to protect fetal life. That's the issue that's before the Supreme Court now.
Again, this is such a fascinating topic for me to really discuss, as I'm sure it is for so many of our listening audience members. You know, Paul, just to kind of play devil's advocate here and really walk the line, just to get your perspective on things, because as you stated, and this may be a very superficial and kind of basic perspective that a lot of people take. So when we address the concept of the woman's right to choose, and the Roe v. Wade case in particular, now what's being really compared and contrasted here, but what you're saying is, first and foremost, the woman's right to choose, and that is something you agree upon. Now, the fetal not having the right to life is something you disagree with. How do they both balance out? What would the outcome be if the woman has a right to choose, and let's say it's a heartbreaking but extreme example, right? Just for this purpose of conversation. Right. A woman, unfortunately, is raped, doesn't want to keep the baby. In that scenario, it is, of course, something that is very difficult to balance there. So she has the right to choose, but the fetal also, in your argument, has the right to life. What are the possible outcomes, and how is that balanced?
Oh, that's a great question, and I'd like to try. Now, my answer isn't the same as everyone's,
of course,
including
absolutely.
all conservatives. But if the woman does have a right to control her body, I think you're exactly right that if there's a rape, then she was pregnant against her will, and I distinguish that type of a pregnancy from, say a couple who, I didn't know we were going to get pregnant, and just
absolutely.
I mean, I think there's a difference, and so I think that is a tough question. Also, I think if the woman would face serious life-threatening problems from a pregnancy, I think the woman's right to life should prevail. And so. But neither right is absolute, and Roe v. Wade doesn't make the woman's right absolute. Frankly, there has always been limitations on it, even in Roe v. Wade.
Absolutely.
So, if the court comes down, if the new court, and it's got a conservative majority right now, if they were to decide in favor of this Mississippi law and push the date back to 15 weeks when a state could begin to protect fetal life. Yeah, this would upset a lot of women because there's, about 2 more months or so where they would be prohibited from getting an abortion. They'd have to do it early on. And I mean, that is my take. I think that's what the court will do. With this new case, some people think and hope the court will actually overturn Roe v. Wade. I think that's just highly improbable.
I agree. Paul, this is fascinating to me. And I really like the fact that, and this is what's so unfortunate about this issue, and it raises even further than this particular topic. We know that today's political climate, there is so much division where we do ourselves a lot of injustice when we're not even able to listen to the other side speak and articulate their perspective, and we're so closed off. I enjoy these conversations when I'm having the discussion with someone else that is open to hearing. Not to say that you have to change your opinion, I have to change mine, but just the fact that the conversation can be had, I think, is what is so important. No,
well, I agree. You haven't told me what your position is, and I don't know, but I think honest and intelligent people need to be able to discuss these things in rational ways, and it will help us get through some of the very thorny issues. One other thing I ought to mention about Roe, I believe the legal experts all acknowledge that the legal reasoning behind Roe v. Wade was pretty feeble. I mean, basically, they have the right to recognize the right of the woman to have the right of privacy, but they disposed of existing state rights and personal rights without good reasoning. It's been interesting as I've read on this that the legal experts acknowledge that the reasoning from the Supreme Court really was feeble on that.
Absolutely.
And in my case, I think it was terrible. It was just to destroy the fetal right to life. They didn't have to do that, and I think it was really sad.
Another question that I'd like to ask, Paul, and again, coming from your law background, you are the expert. So what would you say to people out there that are debating this concept, or in their mind, they feel that impeding on a woman's right to choose is, in a lot of instances, really incorporating the separation, or not adhering to the separation of church and state? How do those two balance out or counteract in your mind?
Well, yeah, I don't see that as a separation of church and state issue. The fact is, every law expresses someone's moral views. And if you don't understand that, or whoever doesn't accept that, really, they're going to be very confused. It's a question of whose morality is going to be legislated. So, and it's not really a church and state thing. I mean, if you could pass a law saying that no one could express a moral view, a religious moral view, basically you wouldn't have any views. I mean, that could eliminate everything. So, that's a rather that's a very brief statement of what I believe. I actually have a section in the book about legislating morality because I think that is an issue that interests a lot of people.
What would you say was a highlight for you in writing this book? Or if not a highlight, really something that maybe surprised you that you weren't expecting prior to embarking upon the journey?
It's amazing how much the Roe v. Wade case has affected the laws in the United States of America. I've got one chapter that deals with the right not to be conceived, and how based on Roe v. Wade, a New York case awarded damages to a couple who conceived the baby, saying the baby had a right not to be conceived, and they based it on Roe v. Wade. So that one is really fascinating. There are others, very fascinating aspects of it. Another one is, what do you do with the woman who takes drugs while she's pregnant? The baby ends up a drug addict when born. Can the baby recover against the mother? Boy, that's an interesting one. Because Roe v. Wade would allow the mother to kill the baby, but if she doesn't, would she be liable for damages that she caused by drugs? So there are so many facets. how Roe v. Wade affects other laws that is just amazing.
This rabbit hole can go down for miles, and there are so many different avenues in which we could take it. And that's why I love this discussion. No one particular person is saying, hey, this is my opinion, and this is the ultimate and right way to view it. We are each our own person. We're as individual as our thoughts. But the discussion is where we need to go with this. The discussion is what we need to have. And there's so much room for it. Given today's current political climate, we've gotten away from the conversations. And I think that in and of itself is dangerous. But you know what you have to do. It starts with this fantastic book. Let's grow, let's develop, let's educate ourselves. Head on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, cpaulsmith.com, and pick up your copy of The Fetal Right to Life Argument, 2nd edition. You surely will not be disappointed. Paul, this truly has been an honor. Thank you very much for being a guest with us today.
Well, thank you, Ben. It's been great.